folks, in the world of motor racing, the Grand Prix is probably the best known around the world. It's held in many countries and has a huge following. In Australia, the Grand Prix has been held in about 23 different places over the years. Today, we're in Leyburn in Queensland, about halfway between Toowoomba and Warwick. It's a tiny ex-gold mining town. About 570 people reside here, and today they're holding the 75th anniversary of the very first Grand Prix held in Queensland, right here. It's going to be an incredible day. We've got everything from Ferraris to Fiats, we've got Mustangs through to Minis. Come along for the ride, you're going to meet some wonderful people. These people are so passionate about their cars, and some of them, you'll see multi-million-dollar cars being thrashed around this tiny little street racing circuit. It's going to be an absolute blast. So welcome to this very special edition of Australian Car Collector. We're going to run this over 2 episodes. So when you finish watching the first one, stick around for the second one coming up as soon as we can put it together for you. Let's go and hit the track. So look, there are some cars that you just see a lot of, and then there are other cars that are just amazingly iconic, is the only word for them. And this is one of them. This is a Brabham BT24. I'm standing here with Max. He's the proud custodian of this gorgeous car. Mate, I'm just in awe of this. How long have you had this one?
I've owned this one about 8 years. It's a BT24 replica.
Okay.
They only ever made 3 of them, and they changed hands recently for over $1.5 million each. So
you don't necessarily want to race
do I look
it
like
around
I've got $1.5 million? No, so it's a replica, but it's a very faithful replica. It's got a Brabham chassis. It's got the Brabham bodywork. It's got a Chev engine,
right,
and a Porsche 930 gearbox.
And how long did it take you to put all this together?
It was built for a friend of mine, and I bought it off him. So it was built actually in Sunny Coast by a Kiwi, and another bloke called Darren Goddard, and Steiner and Goddard put it together. And, yeah, it's been racing for about 10 years now.
Wow. And is this your first foray into open wheelers?
It was my first foray into open wheelers because I had the Mark 1 Jag before, which I raced all over Queensland and New South Wales. And I still own it, and it still does a couple of events a year for historic racing. Yeah.
So how do you find not having all that steel cage around you?
Yeah, it's a bit threatening in some ways, and also the difference when you put your foot down hard, and you've got over 400 horsepower at the tyres, and yeah, straight line speed's very different to the Jag.
Keeps you alive though.
You hang on, and the heart stops beating for a little while and starts up much faster.
I think it's fantastic. their race passion is. Just fantastic.
On the streets of Leyburn, or one of the many racetracks around the Darling Downs, Warwick, on the dirt of Millmerran, of course. And it's good to see him just kicking off the day, and only fitting, because it was very important to the late Mike and Ann Collins, who are the driving force behind the Leyburn sprints. And it's great to see that we still go right down to our roots and our grassroots, and encourage and promote and showcase juniors. So what a wonderful honour for these young men and women. Leyburn Street Sprint, one of the greatest events, not just motoring events, but greatest events in Queensland, and it's wonderful to see that an event has brought millions of visitors. 93 years young.
Folks, this is a 1925 Austin Special. It's the oldest race car in the event. Bear in mind that we are talking about a sprint race here, not side-by-side racing. So each one of these vehicles, as they go across the line, they are separated with a time distance. So safety is of paramount importance out there. It means they're not racing side by side with each other, and especially when you get something like this against some of the more modern ones that just took off. There's no competition between their times, so they're timed in their class racing. This thing is ancient, old brakes, and nowhere near the same sort of power as some of the younger machines that have just gone over the line.
Turn number 3. MGA on the train right now. Just ahead of them is Paul Ritchie and the Sunbeam Alpine, one of the many brands
One of the wonderful things about the Leyburn Sprints is that you get open wheel races such as these ones behind me, competing up against sedans and two doors, fastbacks, convertibles, the whole lot. There's the most amazing gambit of vehicles here. So these incredible enthusiasts have taken street cars, turned them into race cars. Some of them are 40, 50, 60 years old, and they're still out there, still going as quick as they ever did, even though nowadays they're worth 5 or 6 times more than they were when they were first put together. You've just got to admire the dedication of these people. It's incredible. Open wheeler sections such as these, I mean, the open wheeler that a lot of people are familiar with are the sort of Indy cars and the Formula Ones that you see. So this is a scaled down version of that. So as we come down through the classes, you get down into vehicles that have actually comparatively small engine sizes. So some of them are no bigger than 1200cc, which is what you'd expect to find in a little city runabout. But getting incredible speeds out of them. You know, some of these cars can top 200 kilometres per hour. Just amazing.
No, it's broke.
One thing you might notice too as we scan around the track and the pits areas is that not only are we bringing together the most amazing eclectic collection of motor cars, but also the drivers themselves. So we've got, as the announcer was mentioning, so one of the oldest cars here, or the oldest car here, is an Austin 7, and it's actually been driven by the oldest driver here as well, and he didn't start driving until he got into his early 70s, so you just got to admire that for a start. But one of the most amazing things about the Leyburn Sprints is not only do we get a huge eclectic collection of motor cars, but also the drivers themselves. So we get people in their 70s, there's people back in their 20s as well. A whole gambit of people come to the Leyburn Sprints, and it really is a wonderful melting pot of people and machines. Morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
I first saw this car on a trailer at the BP service station at Caboolture on the highway.
When? How long ago?
A couple of years ago, would it
Yeah.
be? And I thought, wow, I'm going to get a photo of that. It's beautiful. I'm Ben, by the way.
Max, Ben.
Thanks. Hey, tell me about this. This is yours now?
This is mine. Has been mine for, I bought it in 2010.
Right.
It was a bag of bones and I did a full restoration. And,
Wow.
And since about 2014 I've been running it. I took it to England and ran it in a couple of events over there. And I've run it here 5 or 6 times, Noosa Hill Climb, Mount Morgan.
Fantastic.
I go to Austin 7 historic sprints, historic racing at Winton.
Okay. Wow. And have you had any history before with Aston Martin before you
No,
bought this one?
no.
So this is your first
This is my first
toe in the water.
First toe in the water with Aston Martin, and my only toe in the water that I'll ever be
Okay.
with Aston Martin.
And why this particular car?
Well, it was at an auction that I was buying another car at, and it had a ridiculous reserve on it for what it was. So it didn't receive a bid at the auction. And I rang up on the Tuesday about the other car I bought and said, oh, what happened with the Aston Martin? And he said, oh, I didn't get a bid, but he'll take just over a third of what the reserve was.
Wow.
And I said, radio, put it on hold for about 15 minutes until I make some inquiries. I had to bring some fans to make sure it was as genuine as it was, as I thought it was. And it was a full genuine car, but it was an absolute bag of bones.
Really?
Yeah.
So over what period of time did it take to restore it to where it
It
is?
took me 4 years.
Wow. And was that a lot of the work you're doing yourself, or were you having to?
I did all the mechanicals myself, all the chassis. I don't do timber or aluminium.
Okay.
I
Guess
do
what?
all
I
the
don't either.
electricals. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, considering you've got a car that's worth as much as a nice home,
Yeah.
and you're punting it around on a racetrack, I think it's an absolute credit, mate. Well done.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful thing. Excellent stuff.
Thank you.
There you go. Folks, this is something I really didn't think I'd see here at the Leyburn Sprints. We've got what year is it, Doc?
1912.
A 1912 Model T. I'm here with its proud owner, custodian, dad. This is Doug. Doug, this is just gorgeous, mate. How long have you had this car?
My dad bought it in 1956.
Right.
And basically he bought it for me because I was a spoiled ugly child.
Wow. That's amazing. So, when you say he bought it in 56, what condition was it in?
It was complete. It was in a time when you couldn't find a complete car. Yeah. So anyway, he bought it. Dad and I restored it in the sort of late 50s, early 60s, and it's been on the road ever since.
And is this the same condition that it was left in the 50s and 60s? So it hasn't been touched since, other than maintenance?
No, other than maintenance.
Wow. Now, a little birdie tells me you drove this some distance to get here today.
We only live 40 k's away from here.
Right. And so you drove this 40 k's to get here. All right, that's no mean feat. That's pretty good. And I believe you have a bit of a history with Ford.
Yes.
And if you race Ford race teams, too,
Yes.
Right.
We started selling Model Ts in the family in 1924. That was the first Partington's garage, and that was in Gilbert, Victoria. My dad told me bedtime stories about Model Ts, and he always said, "I'll get you one." And in 56, when I would have been 12, we bought this car and we brought it home and got into it and got it nice. It's 100% original.
So you would have learned to drive on this car, I would
Yes.
guess.
Oh yes,
Wow.
Doesn't everybody?
Oh, of course, yeah, you learned to drive in your first car. So Doug, tell me, as the car's life moves forward, who's the custodian that will take on from here?
My granddaughter. Yes. She drives it very well. She's been driving it since she was about 10. And they're incredibly easy for children to drive.
Why is that?
Because the transmission is so simple. Yeah, and I teach a lot of children to drive on this car.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's rather interesting because it was actually built in Detroit, in the original Ford Model T factory, Highland Park. It was then shipped over to Windsor in Canada without an engine, so it could become a British Empire product to be exported to Australia. They ground off the made in USA things on the car, and it eventually got here in 1912. It was probably built in 1911, but the factory records tell us that it was one of the initial cars that were built for export under the British Empire scheme. So that's why now it's under.
So there's even politics in cars.
Oh, like you wouldn't believe. If Henry sent them over, he couldn't bring them back. So this is one of those cars. The body was built in Pontiac, Michigan, by the Revved motor company, carriage company that built bodies for Ford in those days. The engine, transmission, and diff were built by the Dodge brothers, and it was assembled at Highland Park, which at the time was the largest factory in the world.
Has it been modified at all?
Not at all.
Not at all.
My father was very much a man that said, as it was, as it should be. And never been hotted up or any other nonsense. You can make them go a bit better, but I've never bothered. It'll run along all day in the 50 to 60 k an hour range. They go uphill really well. This car weighs just a whisker over 600 kilos, and it just thinks it's by comparison with other cars.
How many horsepower?
22. The early cars were 22, they dropped back to 20 when they couldn't get decent fuel. So this is a high compression one.
So speaking of fuel, what fuel do you run in this?
Can we look under the engine bay at all? Yeah.
About as simple as you can get. This car was supplied with big screen headlights. They were extras at the time. So hood, windscreen and lights were all accessories. Wow. It's all genuine original Ford steel. Not one bit of metal's ever been replaced on the car. and it's got gas headlights, kerosene side lights,
Genuine air horn. And brakes on the rear and not the front?
No brake. The brakes on the back of the handbrake.
Okay.
And they're cast iron shoes against a tin brake drum. So they don't work.
You're really planning ahead.
Yeah. The main brake is on the transmission.
Okay.
It's a 2-speed planetary transmission, and it's so simple, and it's just, instead of your modern automatic, you pull it into drive and a solenoid or a hydraulic cylinder goes on the band. This you put your foot on the band. And away it goes.
How wonderful. Well, thank you so much for bringing it along today. I just think it's extraordinary. And, to have driven it, a reasonable distance together.
We've driven it a lot in years gone by. We don't do it as much now, but we have driven it to Sydney, to the Gold Coast, and those sorts of things. And of course, I've got another one at home that Mark knows well. Right? And the last time I drove it was at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So there's not many people who have driven the Model T.
That's that is fantastic. Mate, absolute delight to meet you. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
About 5 or 6 k's from the town of Leyburn. Target is wonderful wife Elizabeth in a beautiful old Model T to a memorial site. And this site, it's quite extraordinary standing here because from here 200 Liberator planes took off and took out across the Coral Sea to fight in the air battles of World War II. Doug was just telling me, was it 40% of them never came back? 40% attrition rate. A lot of them just ran out of fuel, just trying to get back. They pushed it to the limit. They could go no further, and on the trip back, just ventured into the sea, into land. Memorial to it. It's quite eerie just standing here with the beautiful clatter of this old car behind us and just absorbing this history. Incredible people that defended our country.
My special interest is the fact that the vast majority of the Liberators were built by the Ford Motor Company, and they came out of some of the same factories that car came out of. Amazing stuff. And at its peak, Ford could build one of those an hour.
That's amazing.
Unfortunately, I've been to Willow Run, which is the plant, and it was 1.5 miles long, and there was a T-junction where the wings went on, and the doors that the Liberators went out of were just these giant tilt rooms, and every hour they'd open one and out would go a Liberator. That's unbelievable stuff.
Engineering of the free world.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
Well, as the sign says, lest we forget.
Yeah.